These are the 10 plants Chip and I would use in any landscape. Today I am sharing exactly which ones they are, why you should consider them, and how they can give you big benefits in your garden. I want to start with one of my favorites, very versatile. It is Ginkgo biloba. For years, starting back to when I first began to use ginkgos, I don't know if there weren't a lot of cultivars or I wasn't aware of them, but we used mostly autumn gold. It is beautiful. It has that very unique shaped leaf and then fantastic fall color. Kind of is known famously for turning a really vivid yellow or orange and then dropping its leaves all at once. People like it because you clean up the leaves and it's not dropping leaves constantly. Recently, I've become aware of a lot of different cultivars at the Dallas Botanic Garden. There's a hedge that's like 2 feet tall out of American. It sounds a little sacrilegious to prune ginkgo into a hedge, but if you put that aside, it actually is quite lovely. And American is a very dwarf variety of ginkgo that I didn't know exist until I saw that. So the size of the ginkgo, like autumn gold, makes it a little bit so you can only, limits its use. But then when you have jade butterfly, which I have 2 of them planted here at my house, only gets 12 to 15 feet tall, all of a sudden you've got a patio scale tree with no root problems at all. Quite a variety of sizes that make it really useful. If you want a tree that looks interesting even when it's not flowering, this next one has one of the most distinctive trunks you can put in a landscape. And the older it gets, the better it looks, almost like a piece of sculpture. Arbutus marina, which is a cross between Arbutus unido, strawberry tree, and Arbutus menziesii. That cross was made in the early 1900s, originated at a nursery in the Marina district of San Francisco. That's how it got its name. Tremendous interest in that it has little strawberries, a bell-shaped flower. You've got this fantastic trunk. It's evergreen. It's really a useful, relatively small tree. That's hard to find, a small evergreen tree with interest that isn't destructive in terms of roots. You can put it near paving without having to worry about what's going to happen down the road. And the other thing is you can grow it as a multi-trunk like you see here, or you can grow it with a single trunk. Now, if you live somewhere with brutally hot summers, this next plant seems to enjoy that kind of weather that makes most plants miserable. And when it blooms, you're going to say, wow, it's got a fantastic bloom. The common name is Mexican bird of paradise. The botanical genus is Caesalpinia. This is one that I've been using quite a while because it lends itself to dry, water-efficient landscapes, and we've done quite a few over the years. It doesn't seem to take much shade at all. I planted 3 of these all at the same time, and the one looks like this, and the other 2 just sat there and looked like I just planted them the day before. And I think it's because I didn't anticipate the amount of shade they got from the neighbors' trees. Now here in our area, we're zone 9, the frost really makes it die back to almost nothing, like you can almost not see it. In fact, it might look like it's dead in the middle of the winter. Because it dies back to nothing, it's kind of self-controlling in size. And you do cut it back a little, cut the dead wood off every year just as it starts to sprout. But you don't have to do a lot of pruning to control it in size. They can get bigger than this one, but in our zone, they don't get much bigger because every year that frost controls the size of it. One thing we don't get nearly enough of in warmer climates is really good fall color. But this next tree can give you the kind of autumn show that you'd expect to see somewhere much colder. In my 60 years, what I constantly run into is people are not just looking for beautiful trees, they are looking for the perfect tree. And as soon as their tree is not perfect, many people complain. Messy, root problems, I'm always raking leaves, drops berries. Well, the closest in my 60 years that I've come to finding the perfect tree is this one. So this is a special cultivar of Chinese pistache called Keith Davy Chinese pistache. It doesn't really do anything bad, and yet it does a lot of things fantastic. Really well-behaved roots, gets big enough for shade, but not so huge that it causes problems down the road. You know, it's more like a 30, 40-foot shade tree. If you use Keith Davy rather than the straight species, you don't get any seeds. The regular Chinese pistache is male and female, so the females produce all kinds of seeds. And it guarantees beautiful fall color. There are some duds if you plant the straight species, but if you plant Keith Davy, you're guaranteed that vibrant, orangish, reddish, fabulous color. I know roses aren't exactly a surprising plant to put on a list like this, but there are a few specific, really easy varieties that I choose and I tend to use over and over and over, as opposed to the millions that are available. These are all roses that don't take special care. You know how you can go to a rose pruning class and they tell you every nuance about pruning hybrid teas and how to get the best flower and be able to show it in a show? Well, these aren't those kinds of roses. You almost think of them like a shrub that blooms a lot. Ice cap, which is not all that well known, its cousin or sister or brother is very well known, iceberg rose, but ice cap is a smaller version of iceberg, and I like it because iceberg tends to get bigger than you had in mind, and ice cap is about half the size of iceberg, and so almost everywhere you're thinking of using iceberg, ice cap would work really well. Beautiful white flowers, easy to grow, constantly reblooming, and easy to prune. You just prune off old flowers. Marmalade Skies is one that, I don't know, nobody seems to use, but it is absolutely beautiful floribunda rose. Blooms like crazy, again, easy to care for. And then the third is my favorite climbing rose, and I planted it here on our arbor. As you can see, it doesn't look like much yet, but the idea is it's gonna grow up this wire and string and get up on that arbor, and then I'm gonna clear the trunk a little bit so there's not a lot of bushy growth in front of the pool. And it's called Sally Holmes. Really good climbing rose. It's an award-winning rose, and I highly recommend it. This next plant is everywhere, and that could make it really easy to overlook. But if you choose the right variety, you can completely change the color, size, and variety it brings to your landscape. So I have seen a lot of complaints when people write in comments about crepe myrtle. They are somewhat ubiquitous, and I guess in some parts of the country considered invasive, not in our part of the country. It blooms like crazy here. And what I like to use is the off cultivars. Dynamite and the Black Diamond series are very controlled in size. They don't get real big. And Dynamite has this amazing flower. You can grow it as a multi or as a single trunk. Not really a shade tree because it just doesn't get very big, which is a plus because a lot of times you don't have a lot of room. Easy to work in a lot of spots that you have sun. You need sun for the bloom. That Black Diamond series is quite unique in that the leaves are red all the time. That's unusual. And then with that blush pink flower, really beautiful contrast, and only gets about 8 to 10 feet tall. So that's unusual for a crepe myrtle. And then on the other end of the scale, we have Natchez, which, you know, there's a whole series of Indian tribe crepe myrtles, and the Indian tribe crepe myrtles have these big plumes of flowers that tend to be at the ends of the branches. Really spectacular. Natchez is the white one, and that is a shade tree. I mean, that'll get 25, 30 feet tall, and it blooms all the time in the summer. It starts about late spring and just goes right through to the first frost. Now, one thing that people complain a lot about with crepe myrtles is aphid, and they are subject to aphid. A fantastic organic control of aphid. You use some John and Bob's blend over the root zone, and then over the root zone you put 1.5 inches to 2 inches of a good brand of earthworm castings like Worm Gold. I like it because it not only controls aphid like that within 2 or 3 days, but it also is fantastic for the overall vitality of your tree. Not every great plant needs to be the star of the garden. This next one is especially good at spilling over walls and softening hard edges. and it gives you a bonus that can bring every garden to life. Rucelia is the genus. The cultivar is St. Elmo's fire. A lot of people call it firecracker plant. And when you see how it blooms, you understand the name firecracker plant. Blooms like crazy all the time, takes heat, takes not much water, about 4 to 5 feet tall. Really neat, easy to grow plant. Nothing goes wrong with it. Blooms as soon as you plant it. Attracts hummingbirds and butterflies. It's one that, even though I have been around 60 years, I've only been using it for about 5 because I didn't even know of it until I learned about it from a nursery that specializes in these types of plants that are easy to grow, that was in Arizona. Green dominates most landscapes, which is exactly why this plant is so useful. It gives you a completely different color and texture without needing flowers to do all the work. It's called a smoke tree, and this is a cultivar called Royal Purple. Botanical genus is Cotinus. Doesn't get real big, doesn't have any root problems, very easy to grow, water efficient, tough, kind of meets all the things you're looking for. Royal Purple gives you those reddish leaves. Needs sun to do that. I have some trees planted, and a couple of them might be getting more shade than I would like, but in full sun does great. And the seed production, which produces what looks like smoke, and hence you get the common name smoke tree, and it gets these puffs of smoke all over. You can grow them as a multi, where they get 12 feet tall and 8 to 10 feet wide, or you can grow them as a single trunk tree where they get 12 to 15 feet tall. So it's not a big dominating plant, and that's why we can find neat spots for it. And a lot of times we use them by themselves because they're spectacular. Here's another plant where choosing the right variety makes a huge difference. Depending on which one you pick, you can get very different sizes, colors, and uses, which is why I have several favorites, different cultivars that have very different looks. I get complaints about Nandina being an invasive species, which apparently it is in some parts of the country, not here. But there are cultivars of Nandina that are not invasive because they don't produce seeds, which is what makes the normal Nandina domestica invasive. So Chime Nandina is a really unusual Nandina. It's so unusual that I liked it and I used it at my own house. When you look at it, you maybe don't know it's a Nandina. Very unusual growth, stays small, good for water-efficient gardens, which is what I attempted to put together here. Flirt spreads out, really delicate looking and easy to grow, great color throughout most of the year, especially in the fall and the spring. Gulf Stream, you can kind of plant it and let it go, and it doesn't get tall. It tops out about 3 to 4 feet with that nice texture. Obsession, fantastic color and kind of unique form. And again, no seed pods, so it's not invasive. I used to use it a long time ago, and I've continued to use it when I can find it. And that's Royal Princess. That's a big one. Great fall color, great texture, very well behaved. Makes like an 8-foot screen. And then on the other end of that, you have Firepower. Stays small, but still gives you that great color and has a completely different texture. So it's a real useful genus of plants that isn't just that old standby Nandina domestica that's been used and overused from when I started 60 years ago. My vice president in charge of tree selection, Chip Valentino, has joined us for this one because he's an expert, and this is one of his favorite trees. For most of the year, this tree can quietly do its job in the landscape. But when the season changes, it becomes impossible to ignore, maybe even more spectacular than the Keith Davey pistache. Acer rubrum, October glory. Chip admires it because it is a well-behaved tree, and it has fantastic fall color and a nice controlled growth habit that is, doesn't need a lot of pruning. Maybe a 40-foot tree, so you use it as a shade tree. And it looks like that typical tree that a first grader might draw with a trunk and a round head on it. And it grows that way without you having to encourage that. It kind of just grows perfectly with that shape. Choosing the right plants is only part of creating a landscape that looks great for years to come. In this video on the screen, I share what 50 years as a landscape professional has taught me, and the lessons I wish I understood earlier.